This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the app today. Use that code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Also, take the guesswork out of buying NBA or NFL tickets with Game Time. Of course, Patriots schedule just released. We now know when they're playing at Foxboro. And the Celtics begin the Eastern Conference Finals tonight at the TD Garden against the Indiana Pacers. Download that Game Time app, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Greg, let's look at some of the headlines. Of course, the biggest story coming out this morning, we knew that Cole Strange was dealing with things health-wise, that knee injury. Neither of us felt super confident that he would begin the year ready to go week one, but Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network reports this morning that Strange is expected to miss the start of the season and could miss half of the season. Your thoughts about that report?
Yeah, after what we saw on the field yesterday, Nick, that was not surprising. I mean, so as far as the injured players that were there that we saw, Kendrick Bourne was on the field doing some things, but to me, he doesn't look all that close. Maybe he gets cleared by sometime in training camp. The knee looks a little stiff, which is to be expected. He's working his way back from ACL surgery. Jelani Tavai was not on the field. He was wearing a sleeve over his right calf. So he's coming back. I mean, at least Bourne was on the field doing some things. Cole Strange was there in a t-shirt, shorts, not doing anything other than watching. He didn't look like he just came from a workout or went down on the rehab field and came and watched. No, he was just out there just watching like a spectator. So right then and there, I was like, he's not coming back anytime soon. And so this report sort of confirms it. What's weird is that I still don't think anybody's reported whether or not he had surgery. Like Rappaport's report was just about his knee, leg injury or something like that. I mean, I would assume he had some sort of surgery. I know that he was hurt early on in camp last year or preseason, whatever it was, the season. But he played through it, and then he ended up doing worse damage, and I assume that he had some sort of surgery at some point. We'll have to see how that goes. But you combine that with, with how he looked on the field or what he did on the field, also the fact that they drafted Layden Robinson in the 4th round. Caden Wallace, we know they're trying him at tackle. He could eventually be a guard. We'll have to see. Plus, the year before, they drafted Jake Andrews, Sidy Sow, Antonio Mafi. Those guys are all back. You're just looking at it, you're like, all right, something doesn't add up. There's something going on with Cole Strange. And so now this basically confirms it. And so, given the time frame that he said, I think it would be somewhat a surprise if we saw him at all this year, but we'll have to see how that goes.
Yeah, and I had said at the time during the draft that the Robinson pick was a head-scratcher for me because of how many, assets you had utilized to figure out the interior offensive line. But I had that one big fat caveat, and the one big fat caveat was Cole Strange. And if he wasn't going to be ready, then it made a lot of sense because now, Greg, you look at this offensive line. We'll get into the O-line a little bit more in depth in a little while, but you look at the O-line, I mean, Mafi was seen as pretty much a project, guy who was a defensive player, made the move to the offensive line. Jake Andrews is seen as more of a center. Sidy Sow seems solid, ready to develop and get better. But you did have, some questions about the interior offensive line, even though you had invested. You had questions about Cole Strange, who has not been healthy since he was drafted, and his performance has been up and down, some due to those injuries. So you go back to that draft now, and that Robinson pick at the top of the 4th round makes much more sense to me. Let's look at the OTA absences. You mentioned the injury guys, so let's look at the others. After the Christian Barmore extension, I asked you about Matthew Judon. Could he be next? Judon was not at OTAs yesterday. Gerard Mayo, of course, didn't really make a big deal of this, said it is what it is. Judon has missed OTAs in the past, even when he's had a contract. but is this something we got to make sure that we keep an eye on moving forward here, Greg?
A little bit. I mean, if Belichick was still here, I would be a little bit more worried about it. We did, I think, talk on the last podcast about we need to see, I think the Patriots, when we talked about Matthew Judon, does he get an extension or not? I said, if I'm the Patriots, I'm waiting to see sort of, where am I going with the scheme, and the guys that I do have coming back, Uche on a 1-year deal, Anthony Jennings on a multi-year extension. We saw Keon White a lot on the outside yesterday, standing up in a 2-point stance. He wasn't the only one. It was Dietrich Wise also. I'm not hugely worried. I do find it interesting that Matthew Judon is hosting camps in the area this weekend, Saturday in Tyngsboro, Sunday in Walpole, Westfield on Monday. So it's not like he's gone. He's obviously in the area or coming to the area, or maybe he just sat out the one OTA practice that was open to the media. They have other ones this week. So I'm not too worried about it at this point, but if I'm Matthew Judon and I'm, in my 30s and I saw what I did last year, I'm not in a rush to come back, but I do think that the Patriots will, if they see him as a fit, and I do think this is a question at this point, a team that's decidedly getting younger and rebuilding are going to play the younger guys. Do they see him still as a fit for this scheme and getting paid what he needs to get paid, or do they simply move on, possibly trade him and just go with the younger guys? I think that's up in the air.
Of course, the question I would have is why not just deal him during draft weekend? But maybe you're trying to figure out if he does fit. Maybe you're still questioning. Maybe there's a pathway that makes sense. So maybe that's why they did not deal him during the draft. And
also, Nick, in that regard, and any other sort of deals that get done, whether it's now or right before camp, often the market's a little bit better if teams get to camp and they see what they have, and they're like, we don't have enough on the edge, or somebody gets hurt. It could be a little bit more lucrative for the Patriots than just some day 3 draft pick. I mean, right. you can always deal for a draft pick after the draft for next year, but why not wait? And maybe some teams who were targeting edge in the draft but didn't get what they wanted to, or they don't like their rookies, how they look, maybe they become a little bit more desperate for a seasoned veteran plug and play type guy who can help put a team over the top, like a Atlanta, who did next to nothing on their defense, and they can't rush the passer at all.
Yeah, and they have high expectations this year.
Yep.
So you bring Judon on, and even if you give him an extension, I think Falcons fans would be fine with that. The other absences, let's lump them together. Devon Godchow, Joshua Uche, Anthony Jennings. Any 3 of those guys stand out for any reason?
No. Godchow, he does this. He kind of does things at his own pace, multi-year veteran, highly paid. Now, he doesn't have any more guaranteed money left, in his deal. He's entering the final year of his deal. Maybe he does want to be taken care of, and until that happens, he's going to do him. But I don't think the Patriots are in danger of not having Godchow this year. And plus, they need him because they haven't really done anything at defensive tackle, nose tackle. They let Lawrence Guy walk away. They released him, so they need Godchow.
All right, so we found out yesterday that Devante Parker has decided to call it a career in the NFL. He has retired. He's done. And Greg, I don't know about you, but I tweeted this at Nick C Radio for those who would like to follow me at Nick C Radio. This is just a reminder that, Bill Belichick, and for the broken people that continue to get back at me and say, but he won 6 Super Bowls, that's moving the goalposts. It has nothing to do with the decisions that he made on the offensive side of the ball. But this is just another reminder, another example of how bleeped up this offense was. The decision for Bill Belichick to allow DeAndre Hopkins to walk into the facility, have more than a good shot, an opportunity of signing Hopkins as we went over back then, let Hopkins leave. Hopkins signs with Tennessee. Parker's upset because of it. that he was even allowed to be brought in. So Belichick gave Parker an extension, gave him some extra money because he was upset. And now you look 1 year removed. You didn't get Hopkins, and Parker's out of the league.
Yeah, it's I was trying to call back. I'm trying to look at their depth chart last year, but you go with what they gave Mac Jones last year. I mean, you have Juju Smith-Schuster, who admitted that he was 60% last year. Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. That was your replacement for Jacoby Myers. You let Jacoby Myers walk over $1 million, and you go for a guy who wasn't even as good, and he was compromised. Devante Parker, I'm pretty sure we've talked about this in the past. Not my favorite Patriot to deal with, and I didn't think he wanted to be here. And so for him to go to the Eagles, take a look around and go, nah, I'm good, doesn't really surprise me. I think he pretty much made that decision last year on the Patriots. And also, you can't help but think back to all the flowers that were given to Matt Patricia for finding Devante Parker and executing this deal. It was just, it's another in a long line of offensive personnel failures that led the Patriots to the depth that they sunk to, and now they're trying to climb their way out of it.
I just remember that Raiders game when Parker drops the football last year and takes zero accountability in the post game. That to me is like, that's the end all be all with him. That's how he will be remembered for me here in New England, his time. But again, he's got children, got a family, he's retiring. Hopefully he has good health, lives a good life. Adios, Devante Parker. You mentioned Juju Smith-Schuster. Told you guys yesterday he was 60% last year. Feels better now. Feels much better, he said. How do you feel about Juju right now on May 21st?
I'm glad that he's in a better place. I sort of have my questions about whether it lasts very long. I'm sure he feels really good now in May. If he's on this team, how's he feel in October, in November? Is that knee having to be drained? Is it a constant problem, which a lot of people think that it is. It was a issue last year. It will be for him until he decides to hang it up. Again, to me, when you draft a Jalen Polk and a Javon Baker, along with, Pop Douglas, and you signed KJ Osborne, I don't really see a fit for Juju here. I think Mayo talked about the competition in the room and all that. I mean, definitely sort of a Belichick acquisition, a veteran guy that you've seen, he's played games, stuff like that. This is just a different regime. So Juju Smith-Schuster, to me, is not a fit here anymore, and I would be surprised if he's here all that much longer.
I don't have an issue with keeping him around for a while to see what he's got. Does he have any juice left?
And injuries and stuff like that. Yep.
Yeah, like I wouldn't be in a rush to say goodbye to him. I know a lot of people are just so frustrated from last year they just want to rip the Band-Aid off. But if Juju is, let's say, 85%, 90% healthy, he's a good NFL receiver. He's not great. We don't have to relitigate the decision last year, but he could help a football team. So I don't think there's a problem with keeping him here to see how he does through mandatory minicamp. See what that looks like, even if you can push it to training camp. Now, of course, if you cut the guy after training camp midway through the preseason games, it looks a little bad for you because he's a veteran and all that stuff. But, the wide receiver room, to me, let it be a competition. I mean, you don't have anything to lose. Maybe Juju pushes Tyquan Thornton. Maybe he pushes Jalen Reagor. Maybe those guys push Juju. Maybe he pushes KJ Osborne, who had a couple of drops yesterday during OTAs. Like, keep him around. And if he looks healthy or relatively healthy, he could help you because Kendrick Bourne, I don't know if you agree with this, Greg, but I expect Kendrick Bourne to be put on PUP. I think he'll sit out the first, 4 games.
For sure.
Yeah, so if he is on PUP, then that kind of expands your wide receiver room for a month. Keep him around if he proves to be useful. And in worst case scenario, maybe he builds his value. So, maybe you can get a 6th round pick for him once we get close to preseason because he actually looks pretty decent. He plays a preseason game. He shows out. Maybe a team that needs wide receiver depth is willing to give you a pick they're not willing to give right now because they're waiting for the June 1st cut date. So I don't have an issue waiting on him. I don't think you lose much by having him in the room. I think he does a good job dealing with the media. Seems like a pretty good teammate. So, yeah, I wouldn't be rushing to rip the Band-Aid off, so to speak. One more thing here before we get into your OTA observations specifically. Tom Brady, Drake Maye were together at a Fanatics event over the weekend. There was a great video. I don't know if you've seen this, Greg, but a great video of Brady, Jay-Z, and Michael Rubin talking to the rookies. I thought it was awesome. And like their point of views, you know, Brady as a player, Jay-Z as kind of, you know, the businessman, the mogul that's been around and at the top of his game for decades, and then Rubin,
businessman.
Yeah, and then you've got Rubin, you know, the businessman, the exec, all that stuff. I thought it was a great video. But just your thoughts about the picture. I mean, I thought it was great to see Brady and May, and I know Patriots fans, I'm sure, were geeked out about seeing the past and the future together for that event over the weekend.
Yeah, I thought I don't know why. I mean, maybe it's because they're, you know, two good-looking guys or something like that. But I thought the picture was amazing, and I couldn't stop like looking at it. And I don't know. It seemed like a Abercrombie and Fitch ad or something like that. But like all I could think of was it was just like it looked like a father-son photo, and maybe. You know, maybe that happens. I could see that photo up in a lot of New England homes, poster size and stuff like that. I don't know. I just the past and hopefully the future of the Patriots, the quarterback position. I don't know. It was mesmerizing to me, and I don't know why. Maybe I need help. I don't know. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less in 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball and hockey's postseason, which is coming up. I can't wait. I know Nick is going to be freaking geeked up for all that stuff. That's for sure. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into 1,000 with basketball, hockey, baseball entries today on Prize Pick, America's #1 fantasy sports app. This week on Prize Picks, I'm selecting Jaylen Brown for more than 25 points, David Pastrnak for 2 goals or more, Tyler O'Neill, the big thumper, for 2+ home runs this week, and Kenley Jansen for 2 saves. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy at Prize Picks.
Let's dig into the OTAs, Greg. The overall script. Your thoughts on what you saw?
Yeah, I didn't love it. I mean, look, it was structured basically the first half of practice, and they were out there for like a full 2 hours, maybe a little bit over. I'm not exactly sure when they started. They stopped at a little after 2. You know, and it was no joke. It wasn't a total country club type atmosphere. I mean, they did like real on-field conditioning, running lines like right in front of the media, which I don't know if I've ever seen the Patriots do that. The most they do the hill, which the rookies had to do at the end of their camp. But the first half of practice was basically positional stuff, you know, things that you have to do. What I didn't love was they had 3 very lengthy, I didn't write down the exact times, but it was at least 12 minutes, probably 15. And I know it doesn't sound like a lot, probably to people sitting at home or in their car listening to this, like, oh, 15 minutes. I mean, a 15-minute period in the NFL is like an eternity. It's a long time. And plus, you know, there's all the school of thought that with today's athlete, you need to, you know, limit meeting time, limit practice sessions, you know, just because of their attention span and things like that. I just thought that there was a lot of standing around. I didn't think there were too many wasted opportunities for people to learn. They did finally go to a split where they went on both fields. When the first 2 periods, they were just on one field. So it'd be like, you know, 22 guys on the field and 70 other guys like watching, and which struck me as odd. Normally what you would do. And then in the third period, they did go on 2 different practice fields. So that was a little bit more useful, but then the quarterbacks didn't throw any passes. It was a jog through. Bailey Zappi had his helmet off at some point. I don't know if that was just an equipment issue and he was just playing through to keep the reps going. But I don't know. I thought it could have been a lot more efficient. I haven't really seen that at an NFL practice. I didn't love it. And one thing it reminded me of, and I had forgotten about this, and one thing to sort of monitor going forward as we go into mini camp and training camp and all that stuff. One thing Mayo has to keep on top of is these West Coast guys, Alex Van Pelt, Ben McAdoo. I remember from when I covered Mike McCarthy, you hear reports about it with these, Kyle Shanahan, whoever, West Coast type offensive coordinators. Those guys love their offensive reps. They can't get enough. They overscript for the offense. And yeah, the defense is out there too, but really it's for the offense. And it just made me wonder, and maybe I'll ask this question going in the future, who's in charge of the practice script? I doubt that it's Mayo. Possibly Ben McAdoo, since he's like senior offensive assistant, but Mayo's just got to watch and make sure that these West Coast guys don't get out of control and that he's keeping the team benefit in mind, not just the offense. And yes, the offense has a lot more work to do because they're learning a new scheme. The defense knows what's going on and all this stuff. But I just thought I didn't think it was very efficient. And in that type of setting, I didn't love that, but do I think they lost? Do I think they lost games yesterday? No, but I'm just giving you my impression because I'm a coaching guru. It doesn't really matter which sport it is, but I love observing practices, how they're structured, how efficient they are, what they're working on. I love that stuff. And yesterday I didn't love what I saw.
Now let's talk about the quarterback rotation. And we'll add in a Burt Breer report from yesterday morning. So Burt says that the Patriots are going to get down to 3 quarterbacks by the end of spring. And then yesterday we see the rotation, Brissett, Zappi, May, and Milton. Now, I know some people looked at Zappi going ahead of May and questioned that, seen it as almost wasting opportunities for Drake Maye to get out there and get more snaps. First, let me ask you this. What'd you make of the rotation day one, OTAs at quarterback?
Yeah, I had zero problem with it. This is what I kind of expected. I'll be interested to see how it evolves going forward, but at least and I think this is the case. People need to remember this was the first on-field OTA practice. I was somewhat surprised that the Patriots opened that to us. Normally it's like the second one. But, maybe this was just sort of like get your feet wet type of thing. And tomorrow or the next day, whatever, they're going to do more scheme specific stuff. So they didn't want us out there for that. I don't know. But this was sort of like a first day of school type of thing. And that, Jacoby Brissett and Bailey Zappi have both started games in this league. They both won games in this league. Zappi doesn't know the offense, but Brissett does. And I think it's just a case of, for the rookies, like, all right, you guys don't know what the hell you're doing. You can't, let's crawl before you can walk or run. And so you sit behind the veterans, watch how they do things, and then we'll see how it goes from there. But it was a first day of school orientation type thing. And I had zero issue with how they did things.
I agree with you. One thing I want to make sure is that I'm not going to be, overzealous about certain observations. I don't want to read too much into everything. I mean, it's May. And so I think big picture, we have to do a good job of keeping the big picture in mind. And this is going to be a slow process with Drake. They are building him up from almost zero. They are working feverishly on his mechanics and his footwork and the basics. They're building a foundation. And I think if you were to put this together, and this will go with the Burt Breer report about, the end of spring, we'll see if it's the end of spring or, early summer, whatever it is. But to me, looking at this, it's you build the foundation right now in OTAs with May. And then, as you get closer to mandatory minicamp, you now have that, that battle, right? Like maybe over the next week or so, it's a little bit more of a back and forth between Zappe and May. And your hope is by mandatory minicamp, Drake Maye has a full grasp of everything he needs to have a grasp on. He's ready to be QB2. And now you have the mano-a-mano versus Jacoby Brissett as you get ready for training camp. And then you see if Maye can win the job from Brissett during training camp and during the preseason. So I don't think there's anything to read from this. And I think we all have got to be patient with the young quarterback. And I don't think May 20th, a few snaps at OTA day number 1 is going to make a whole hell of a lot of difference when we get to mandatory minicamp and then training camp. That's when we start to really look at this quarterback situation. Yeah,
I agree with you. And let's just, I'm sure we're going to remind people often about this going forward, but you should know, or you should have a good idea on who you can trust on this information to tell you exactly what's going on and what's important and what's not important. And there's certain people to listen to, like me, and there's certain people not to listen to and to sort of ignore. So if you want the real story about what's going on, and we'll probably get Nikki C out to some practices as well. Yeah, baby. And so as always, you're going to get the truth here and the big picture and what you need to keep an eye on, and don't hyperventilate listening to other people. We'll give you the straight dope.
It's funny because we talk about patience, and I think that's a huge word this year, and I know people don't want to hear it, but it's true. I looked back. I don't know how many people outside of the New England area realize what happened with Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell took over Detroit. He had the very awkward, weird press conference where he's talking about biting chunks out of kneecaps. Mm-hmm. And he starts, 0-10-1 with Detroit. And then they win on an end of clock expiring game situation. Jared Goff, I think, throws a touchdown to win that game against the Vikings. And they finished that year, I think, with 3 wins, whatever it was, 3-13-1. Then people think and then people think oh, well, then they jumped. Then they made the jump in 2022. Yeah, they did, but they started 1-6 in 2022. Yeah, so I mean, Dan Campbell's first 24 games, he had 4 wins. He was 4-21-1 or whatever the hell it was. He was off to a brutal start in the first 24-25 games, and then they kicked it in midpoint year 2. They go on a run. They finish 9-8, and then last year they make the big leap. So I just think we have to keep everything in perspective. Where Gerard Mayo and Dan Campbell had some interim head coaching experience. So when we talk about Mayo, yeah, it might be a really rough start, folks. It doesn't mean that he's going to stink. It also doesn't mean he's going to turn it around like Campbell did. But I think we have to expect a learning curve. I hear all the time, Greg, well, Mayo said this wrong and he made this mistake and he's backtracking here. He's learning on the job. I said this on my podcast. If you're working at Subway, the first time you make a Subway sandwich, the first month when you're making sandwiches, you're a sandwich artist, I think they call them. Say you're a sandwich artist and you screw up one of the sandwiches. You're making me hungry, by the way. I'm sorry. But you're gonna screw up in any job that you do. The first time I did radio, for the first year or two, even up until when I was doing radio, a year ago, you're gonna mess up. It's about learning and it's about being patient. Again, that doesn't excuse the obvious stuff. And when they mess up something obvious or they screw up bad, we will criticize them. It's just from 30,000 feet. Remember, there's a lot of new people involved here. This is gonna take some time. As far as Burt Breer's report, Greg, getting down to 3 quarterbacks by the end of spring, and any feeling on that?
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out how this works. I was shocked by this. I thought for sure that they would go through camp with 4 quarterbacks, if not 4 quarterbacks on the roster. So we know, we know Jacoby Brissett's going to be here.
Yeah.
We know Drake Maye is going to be here. So either Bailey Zappi or Joe Milton is going to be gone. Milton was a 6th-round pick. I mean, could they cut him in June, in May, like, unless he's a disaster off the field, which, like, I've been talking to more people about the Patriots draft picks, and I will say there's questions out there about Joe Milton and his sort of, does he have the want to do all the things necessary to be a franchise quarterback, like first in the building, last out of the building, like that stuff, sort of like professionalism stuff. There's no question that he has the skills, the talent to do it. But I do think there's some questions, but I don't think in a couple months, he's going to be a train wreck where they're just like, we got to get rid of this guy. So does that mean, by process of elimination, it would mean that Zappy's out at some point. So who's the backup? Is it Maye? Like, what if Brissett breaks his leg in week 1 and Maye's got to play? Now, I can see the Patriots, Elliott Wolf, doing that, being okay with it. And maybe that's where they come down at the end of the day, because, like I told you before about when Aaron Rodgers took over for Brett Favre with like no starting experience, they drafted Brian Brom and Matt Flynn, and those were his 2 backups. Like, so it was Aaron Rodgers, who has never played before, and 2 rookie quarterbacks. And so, Ted Thompson at least wasn't afraid of that sort of scenario. I'm just worried, and you've brought this up plenty of times. To me, this is all about building Drake Maye the right way. And if they go to 3 and it's, Milton's the 3rd and Brissett gets hurt, like, I think you run the risk of damaging your future franchise quarterback. So I don't know. I was shocked to see this. I still can't wrap my head around it. I don't know what you think about it, but it's odd to me.
I don't know if there's like some semantics games being played because technically the summer begins on June 20th and mandatory minicamp is the 11th through the 13th. So maybe they're just playing semantics games and saying, well, by the end of mandatory minicamp, we'll have 3 guys that we know, and then maybe we'll try to sneak the other guy on the practice squad eventually. There could be different ways to read this, but I agree with your overall takeaway, Greg. And I talked about this on my solo podcast. I think it was last week. And you mentioned it as well, I think maybe last week, but as soon as Nathan Rourke was let go, it felt like Zappy was going to have more of a chance to make this team because, do you necessarily want to have Maye as your 2 and Brissett as your 3 week 1 of the season? If you have Maye 2 and Milton 3, if you have Maye 2 and Milton 3, now you're looking at it and you say you're an injury away from either rushing Drake Maye out there if he's not quite ready, or worst case scenario, you throw Joe Milton out there because you want to protect Drake Maye.
Oh, good Lord.
Which would be a catastrophe. So, it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. Again, maybe some semantics games being played here. We'll see if that's the case.
Hey, everybody. The NFL schedule is out, including for your Patriots. I know you want to get to a game. I know you want to probably go on the road and see the Patriots in some sort of cool place like London, maybe, for the Jaguars, or Nashville, or Miami, or how about Arizona in the winter, December 15th. Definitely not Buffalo on December 22nd. Stay away from there. I beg you. But you're going to want to go on the road. You're going to want to see the Patriots. You never know when Drake Maye is going to get a chance to play. Guess what? You should go over to Game Time, the Game Time app. It is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NFL, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to kickoff. With killer last-minute deals, all in prices, views from your seats. I love the view from the seats. I got to see where I'm going to sit at anything. Game Time, it's right there on the app. I love it. So which games are your favorite? I mean, if I were you, I would San Francisco, of course. Got to go there. September, great time of year to go to San Francisco. London, who's going to join me in London? That's a great trip. Check it out on the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Let's move on to the offensive line. So yesterday at OTAs, Greg, this was the offensive line one, so to speak. Okorafor at left tackle, expected. David Andrews at center, expected. Mike Onwenu at right tackle, expected. What was interesting was Sidy Sow moves from the right side to the left side, and Nick Leverett is your right guard alongside Onwenu and in between Andrews and Onwenu there on that right side. What'd you make of Sow getting moved to the left and Leverett out there on the right side?
Yeah, it was very interesting, and one of the first things you looked at and was like, okay, that's interesting. I guess out of, you look at sort of who's going to need. So now we know about Cole Strange that he's not going to be ready. So somebody's going to need to start at left guard, a new, quote unquote left guard. And, we know that So last year did right guard. It was, Mafi and I forget who else played left guard at times. Jake Andrews, I think, did a little bit, wasn't very good. I think they view, to me, it's them saying that they view So as a ready-made starter, that they think he's close. Now, Leverett is a veteran, sort of low-level veteran, but he's played and knows how to play, and that's good. To me, Antonio Mafi, who we saw at all three interior spots in practice, including center. To me, it looks like he's still in the project mode. I did not think he was in very good shape last year. I didn't like his shape last year. I think it's worse this year. Definitely interesting. And where did they have Robinson was like third team right guard. And remember, we saw him at left guard next to Caden Wallace in rookie camp. So that was a sort of a change for Layden Robinson. It looks like at the end of the day, it's going to be Leverett and Robinson at right guard. And it's going to be So and probably like a Michael Jordan at left guard. So, yeah, definitely interesting. But I think it says good things about Sidy Sow.
It's also early on, which we have to acknowledge, right? I mean, Caden Wallace was behind Vidarian Lowe in the rotation at left tackle. Does that continue to be the case? It's really early. What I take from it, Greg, is that they just want depth and flexibility. It seems to me they want guys who can be interchangeable to a point. If you can have Wallace move to the left side and be somewhat solid there, if something happens to the right guard situation, you can then slide Onwenu back to right guard, or you can move Robinson to right guard. I mean, there's a lot of different things. If Chuks Okorafor doesn't work out at left tackle, you could try Wallace there at left tackle. You can try Lowe at left tackle. And I just think they're trying to set up a situation where if you have an injury, something comes up, you're not completely screwed. If they can have 4 guys out of the 5 at least be solid, they feel like they can survive that. So we'll see. We'll see how it works out. More offensive line thoughts. You made a mention. You mentioned about Mafi and his physical stature, so to speak. You also made note of Calvin Anderson and Mike Onwenu, Greg. Why?
Yeah. So Calvin Anderson is a guy that we thought was going to come in and compete at some sort of tackle spot, swing tackle, had started games at left tackle for the Broncos. Of course, now we know that he contracted malaria in Africa and had, all sorts of health issues last year. And now he's back. And so we haven't seen him on the field in a long time. And so to me, he looked really skinny for an offensive lineman. I'm sure he's working his way back, and this has been a process. But, to me, the way it looked, unless he makes some serious gains here in the offseason, which there's not much of an offseason, but, basically he has June and July to get bulked up. To me, he looked like a long shot to make this team, but we'll see. They're professional athletes, and these guys are capable of a lot of different things.
Yeah, and Onwenu didn't trim down, right?
Yeah, Mike Onwenu, we've talked a lot about this offseason, and he said we had heard something about him training for right tackle, and I thought maybe he might trim a little bit to be a little bit more nimble on the outside, even though right tackle is more of a power position. It's not exactly, left tackle or anything like that. So but he did not he did not trim down. In fact, he looked bigger than he normally does, but he's a big guy in general. Always has been.
Marte Mapu played mostly safety, correct, but he was also out there as a sub linebacker.
Yeah, I was in positional drills. I was kind of excited, and also he's a guy who has. If we had a question, which we have, about was he going to bulk up and play linebacker? Was he going to get was he going to stay the same size or get skinnier to play safety? I was excited to see him in the safety positional drills, and it didn't look like he had really bulked up at all. And plus, he's wearing number 15 now, which is kind of like a weird number to see him in or safety in.
Yeah.
But then as soon as they went to team, and it was a lot of sub-package passing stuff, and almost immediately he went straight to like linebacker, and I was like, oh, really? So, we're back to this again. And I will say that who's the dude's name? Jalen Hawkins, who is wearing now Devin McCourty's number 32. Also weird to see on the field. He got a lot of run at free safety. I wasn't overly impressed. He was sort of a late signing for this team. But they seem to be doing the same sort of between Duggar and Jabril Peppers and Marte Mapu and Joshua Bledsoe, the same sort of, hey, we don't have free safeties and strong safeties. Everybody plays every position type of thing, which I didn't love, but that was sort of what I came away from this practice.
Another guy we can throw into that mix is Marcus Jones. He played some slot yesterday, according to you, and he was also back there at safety as well, correct?
Yep. That was interesting and something I would like to take a look at, especially with his speed going, sideline to sideline over the top. Yep. That could be interesting.
Yeah, I think, Marcus Jones is a very interesting guy. If he can stay healthy, he could impact this defense. And, I remember Greg Cosell, the conversations that you had with him, Greg, at the time of that draft, and Cosell mentioned the Honey Badger as in comparison to Jones. So I think it'd be fun to have Marcus Jones back there, and maybe he grows into that role, and maybe we do see him on the very back end more than we would anticipate. If one of those outside corners can pop, I mean, obviously yesterday you had Christian Gonzalez and you had Jonathan Jones as your starting two outside corners. But if you can get something from Austin or Bledsoe or, all these other guys, right? I mean, you look at, not Bledsoe, Bolden. You look at, Bolden, you look at Dial, you look at Austin, you could even look at Wilson. If one of those younger guys can pop, then you have some versatility there. And then you could slide Jonathan Jones maybe into the slot, and then you can kick Marcus Jones to the back at safety or vice versa. So they have some parts that can be fluid here. I do want to talk about the defense, though, bigger picture, Greg, because there were a couple of things that jumped out at me reading through things yesterday that could tell us we might have at least some changes or tweaks to what they're going to do. And it has to do with the defensive line. First of all, I read from you that Keon White, and you said this earlier on the podcast, and Dietrich Wise were both in the 2-point stance. Later on in the day, Christian Barmore with the media said they're going to have more of, 4 men up front, and mentioned beating the guy, across from you one-on-one. Is the idea here maybe, have that defensive line 4 up front, try to win your one-on-one battles and not have to blitz as much as they did last year to create that pass rush? Is that kind of the idea? What do you take from what you saw yesterday and what Barmore had to say to the media?
So I asked Keon White after practice about him standing up more and how comfortable, and he said it wasn't a big deal because it was like a heavy passing day, and that's the way that they do things, playing that position on the outside against the pass. I don't know. I mean, he's definitely a truth teller. He also mentioned about how Belichick's not around anymore, cursing everybody out every day, which was interesting to hear. But, I don't know if that was entirely truthful. To me, it looked different. I mean, it wasn't just like, there's an adjustment, now I'm going to stand up. No, it was standing up like almost from the get-go in a 2-point stance. So, but as far as what Barmore had to say, my first instinct would be to say that it's not going to be all that different than what they've done in the past in the passing game. Now, we'll have to see when the run game's involved. Does that change? Are they still, two gapping and things like that? But when it comes to pass rushing, to really set up, I think what they're going to try to do, and they do this with their stunts and twists and things like that. You try to get somebody singled up somewhere, and that's harder to do with 4 against 5. And but when you bring an extra guy, now it's easier to do. It's 5 against 5, and you sort of overload one side, and maybe that frees up somebody else. That's your pressure scheme. That's what you're trying to do. So I wasn't too surprised by the comment, but we'll have to see how it evolves.
Got 2 more things for Greg, but first, want to remind you this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the app today. Use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Also, check Greg out and company at BSJ, $50 for the year. Bedard, Giardi, of course, Corrales all over the seas right now. Haggerty with the Bruins, et cetera, et cetera. Check them out. Best sources around. Watch Patriots film. They do it all. $50 for the year. All right, before we say goodbye, Antonio Gibson. I saw a couple of people make mention of him yesterday. And again, it's OTAs, so we get it. But many people, he stood out to many people, especially in the pass game. Just your thoughts on Gibson and how much of an impact he might have with this Alex Van Pelt offense.
Yeah, he was involved heavily in the passing game. I don't know if that was about maybe trying to keep the load down for Ramondre Stevenson. JaMychal Hasty was involved a lot. I do know the Fenwick kid, the undrafted free agent that they signed. I do know that he's dealing with not an injury, but maybe some hamstring tightness. So that's why we didn't see a lot of him in the rookie camp, and I don't think we saw much of him yesterday. So there aren't a ton of people out there to take reps, but Gibson was definitely involved in the passing game, and it looked, I wouldn't say he blew my doors off or anything, like, look how dangerous this guy is, but definitely effective and efficient, and a good player, and his energy was really good. He was sort of he was really getting people involved in the running back rotation when they were in positional drills. So I thought it was a good start for Antonio Gibson.
Again, I preface this with the idea that it's the first day of OTAs. We're really freaking early in the process. But wide receiver-wise, we talked about Juju earlier, and I just kind of wanted to underline this position a little bit with you. Obviously, Pop Douglas is going to get significant snappage. He'll be fine as long as he stays healthy. Pop will be out there a lot. The 2 rookies are going to make the team. Polk and Baker will be on the team. You agreed earlier, Greg, that Kendrick Bourne likely headed to the PUP list to begin the season. And KJ Osborne, I would imagine, likely to make the team. Not guaranteed, but likely, given the contract and all that stuff. So if Bourne is on the PUP list to begin, Pop, Polk, Baker, Osborne. Looking at the number 5 spot, the battle, you've got Tyquan, Juju, Kayshon Boutte. Those are the 3 top names that we think about. Anything from those guys that you've seen? Any gut feeling on who is more likely to make this team? And we know that Boutte has the gambling stuff, and Mayo said they're waiting on the league for that. But you've got Juju with the health, you've got Boutte with the gambling, you've got Thornton with the injury history, and when you look at it, 5th wide receiver. How are you ranking these guys right now heading into the rest of OTAs?
Right. So it's Boutte, Thornton, and Juju. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, that's what I would say, right? Am I missing anybody? Osborne makes it. Baker makes it. Polk makes it. Pop makes it. Bourne's on PUP.
Rager.
All right, Jalen Rager. Let's throw Rager in there as well.
Yeah. It's a really good question. I'll just say up top, nothing that I saw yesterday made me think anything of anybody there. It wasn't very competitive, and I'm sure some people are listening to this would be like, well, how did Drake Maye look, and what were Jacoby Brissett's stats, and like all this stuff. Like, yesterday was not a day for that. Like I said, it was like a first day of school type of thing. Nobody really stood out in my mind. Thornton and Boutte both had nice plays. I don't remember Juju doing much of anything. I didn't even I don't remember him doing anything, but I'm sure I missed things. I mean, there was a lot of crap going on. I'm trying to watch the defense and the offensive line and all this stuff. I was mostly focused on the offensive line yesterday. And, Rager is definitely in the mix and out there. We know he has the return ability as well. Could be, the new kickoff rule type of guy. So I'm sorry to not have a take on this, but really I don't have any leaning other than I would be surprised if Booty is here at the end of the day.
I think it'll be probably Thornton. I think he's going to make it.
That he's going to make it? Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
So I think they're going to want somebody who could play a little more of the X. I know Baker can, but Juju, I'm wondering about the health. And, I go back to Elliott Wolf saying at the Combine that they're going to play their young guys. So I could see Juju be gone via trade or just released eventually. Rager is a guy who's been on the practice squad, off and on. So I don't think they have much concern about losing him. He could easily slide to the practice squad if they want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And Booty, I don't know, man. I have no idea. I will say I was watching Phil Perry and Tom Curran, our buddies, and Curran made me laugh really hard. They were talking about, down the road during the season, late in the season, what a wide receiver, what's happening, and this guy could be hurt, this guy could be hurt, and Curran throws out, well, maybe Booty's out there, maybe he's playing Keno.
Oh man,
yeah. Anyway, we'll see how the wide receivers come together. That'll do it for us today. He's Greg. I'm Nick. We'll talk to you later in the week.